Well, hey, Cascade Church, welcome to another Wednesday's Word. This morning I was reading in the book of Joshua, and Joshua is dividing up the land. And this is the sort of Bible stuff that's so easy to skip. I remember the first time I read through the Old Testament, there was just pages and pages of genealogies and lists and who gets what land and what river separates what. And sometimes it seems so bizarre. And so one of my goals in these videos is to help us to realize that those little things, although they might not be as immediately applicable, are still helpful for us to know, at least to know why they were important. Think about the Bible, especially parts of the Old Testament, setting up a new nation. God was beginning to restore order. All the way back in Genesis 1, the very first verse, the world was chaotic and void, formless and void. Tohu vabohu, I've mentioned those words before, are the Hebrew words for formless and void. Those would echo into a Mesopotamian analogy of chaos, or be chaos monsters. And there's a constant war of the gods versus chaos fighting to see who would win. What we see in the Bible is chaos reigns over the world, and God just says, let there be light. Chaos ends. From chaos and disorder, God restores order with a single word. The end of his ordering of creation after 7 days is the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve are in perfect peace, perfect harmony with God, with each other, with nature. And then through the deceit of the devil, through their own pride, we broke God's shalom. And what God does from Genesis 3 with the fall all the way through to the cross, and then even then to the book of Revelation, is he's slowly restoring that shalom. So bringing the world back to an Edenic, peaceful, perfect spot. So the Bible begins with chaos that turns into a garden. The Bible ends with chaos that turns into a garden in the middle of a new Jerusalem, where there's a place with the tree of life, the no more sun because God's light is everything we need. That's the perfect end goal of the Bible. So then in the middle, we see God in many different ways conquering chaos and bringing order back. So consider the Promised Land. For a long time, the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness. They were trying to get there. They've been freed from slavery, finally trying to find a place to call home. They get to the Promised Land, and now they have to overcome things. So they step in, and they begin to conquer. And once the Canaanites were driven out, now they need some sort of system, some sort of ordering so people know where they live, so there's not a vying. You could easily turn the Promised Land into a place of competition where the Reubenites are trying to get land from the Gadites, the Levites are taking money and land from the Judites, and so on and so forth. Instead, the goal was to be at perfect peace, perfect unity, where people would say, this is my land, I don't need any more. Imagine if our country had been founded that way, and you can debate all the Columbus stuff, let's put that on hold for now, but just imagine coming into an empty land, and I know it wasn't empty, but this is just an analogy, and just saying, okay, these groups will have this area, these groups will have this area, that's all you get. If you have more kids, then you subdivide it, like a Yellowstone type ranch, if you've watched that TV show. You're not constantly trying to acquire more. You're not looking to see who you can arrange or sabotage and get their stuff. You have their land. In Joshua, what we see in those lists is the establishment of those ranches to say, okay, this is where your tribe lives. This is where your family lives. This is the ordering. If there's chaos, if there's an exile, if there's a time of war, or even a time of poverty, at the year of Jubilee, you get your land back. Don't look at your neighbor's land. Don't covet their land. You've got yours. And so they're looking at this way of instituting order into creation. And so while honestly I don't care about which tribe got what place, I've never been to the Holy Land. I'd love to go someday and walk some of these roads and see some of these rivers. My takeaway from that is God intends our world to be ordered so that we're not always vying for things. I'm not looking across the street, looking at my neighbor's house and saying, how do I get what they have? This coveting gets deep into our hearts. And so our goal is to slowly but surely come to peace. When God teaches us to pray, when the Lord's Prayer, one of the prayers is, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. That doesn't mean get me through earth till I can get to heaven. Although that's how I've lived a lot of my Christian life, saying, okay, this world is trash. I can't wait for heaven. Or Jesus, if you want to come back right now, that would be great. All that's true. This world can be trash. Heaven's going to be great. I would love for Jesus to come back. But the bigger hope is that today I can step out here into Marysville and into Woodinville and into Seattle, and I can bring the kingdom of God with me through peace, through justice, through establishing just regulations and land use, like we see in the book of Joshua, through bringing peace to business practices. In this reading this past week, I came across Zacchaeus the tax collector. Jesus came and met him and welcomed him into the kingdom of God. And Zacchaeus immediately said, I'm going to stop my unethical business practices. I'm going to restore the money I've stolen and extorted from people. I'm going to bring God's peace to the financial world around me today. He didn't say, you know what, now that I'm a Christian, I'll stop sinning as much and someday I'll be in heaven and it'll all be okay. He said, today I'm going to start changing things. And that's why Jesus said, today salvation has come to this house. He wasn't only saying that Zacchaeus is saved, that his name was in the book of life, that he'd be in heaven someday, although that was all true. He was saying, today, look, God's kingdom is advancing. Unjust practices are being reversed. Money that was stolen is being given back. That's what the kingdom of God looks like. And so one of our goals is to bring peace. So right now, some of us might be waiting for heaven. I'm looking forward to it myself. I'd love for Jesus to come back. But between now and then, in every interaction we have, we can bring the kingdom of God. You can bring the kingdom of God into your family life, just the way you act when people ruffle your feathers. I heard an interview today with a guy who used to be so angry, used to be so defensive and just no fuse. And his son on a trip spilled a glass of water, and the dad was like, oh, there, it's okay, and started dabbing it up. And the rest of the family, the wife and the older kids, all jaws dropped open. Because before, the dad would be saying, what's wrong with you? Don't you know I paid for this meal? You're ruining our vacation. I can't believe I can't take you kids everywhere. And it would just fly off the handle. But through therapy, through prayer, through a relationship with Christ, this guy had been able to calm himself so that in a very minor thing, instead of bringing chaos, he was bringing peace. And in those little things, in all those little ways, and maybe sometimes in big ways too, you and I can bring God's peace into this world. And so today, think about that. If you're reading through genealogies and lists of lands in Joshua, or reading the story of Zacchaeus the tax collector, or reading how a widow comes to the temple and gives just a little bit so that God's work can continue, see that in all these big ways, in all the little ways, our job is to bring God's kingdom today on earth as it is in heaven. So with that, that's all I got for today. As always, send me your questions. I'd love to field those. Have a great week.